Good evening. Welcome to the July 20th, 2023 meeting of the Mount Juliet Municipal and Regional Planning Commission meeting. As we begin our meeting tonight, I'm going to read in regards to a quorum, because we do have several members absent at the meeting tonight. The presence of 5 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, wait up to 30 minutes after the scheduled meeting time for a quorum to be present. In the event that a member is required to leave a meeting prior to adjournment and the departure causes a loss of quorum, no further official action may be taken until a quorum is restored other than an adjournment. A majority vote of those commissioners present, and in no case less than 4 affirmative votes, shall be required to decide any item of business requiring action by the commission. Just wanted to share that with everyone here tonight. With that being said, our first item up this evening will be to set our agenda. Any changes, amendments, adjustments? We will set the agenda as stated. Next item up on our agenda tonight is our staff reports. We'll begin with our planning director, Ms. Samplin.
Thank you. I hope every one of you all and everybody in the audience and watching at home survived the storm that we had today. It was something wicked. We could not even see the old American Jury building from right where we are. So it was wicked. And I know our public works, police, fire, all had their hands full with that. So we appreciate their service as well. I wanted to remind everybody of our continuing education coming up September the 26th. That is a Tuesday. And remember, I'm going to need some of your work day, but I'm trying to get you out before way dark. Well, I usually keep you till about 9:30 or 10, and we're trying to end around 6:30. So I'll finalize those times soon as I work with those presenters. But right now we're thinking maybe like 1:30, 2 o'clock. And I'm also working on a shuttle to try to get us over to our first stop, as I'm not sure how many parking spots are available over there at the treatment plant.
Wonderful.
So September 26th, possibly 1:30, 2 o'clock, but we'll finalize that and give you guys plenty of notice.
Thank you.
you.
Shane, anything from Public Works?
Several things. First, I want to give props to our streets department. They did one heck of a job today after the storm to get our public roadways cleared. I think they got it done within 2 hours.
Wow.
Of the storm. There was some substantial damage. I saw a picture of Commissioner Justice out there helping the guys. So I want to thank our streets department along with police, fire, all of our first responders to get us back going. And now we got sunshine. You wouldn't even really tell the storm hit us. Second thing I want to talk about, we've opened bids for the Lebanon Road Sidewalks Project, Phase 2. That will take us from North Mountain Juliet Road to Park Glen Drive. Wow. 6-foot sidewalks on each end. The bids came in a tad bit high. Matt White was telling me he's going to try to take this to the BOC, though, in August. So we're going to increase walkability within the city. It's a project doing that. Finally, Willoughby Station Roundabout. They are way ahead of schedule, what Matt was telling me today. They're going to complete Phase 3 or Phase 2. The traffic plan of Phase 2 is going to be completed next month. After that, they'll hit Phase 3, which they'll hope to be done by December. And then they'll finish up the project in late spring. So we had initially talked about it being completed in June. So might be looking at a couple of months being completed early. And with that concludes a engineering public works staff report.
Yes, sir. I agree. That storm came out of nowhere today, and actually appreciate the notifications that we received. I know it's not called Nixle now, but call me old school for still calling it Nixle, but getting the notifications and everything coming out our way. Anybody that does not sign up for that, if you live in the community, or heck, really, if you live in eastern Davidson County or anywhere in Wilson County, I recommend signing up for that service. I've got my kids on that, my wife on that, and just some great information always coming through that notification, just as a heads up to be aware of anything that we have going on. So thank you guys as well for everything that you do. With that being said, next item up on our agenda is our citizen comments. At this time, we'll take citizen comments. The public is welcome and encouraged to make public comment about any item on our agenda. There will be 2 opportunities for comments. You may speak now, or you may speak when the item is presented to the Planning Commission. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anyone that wishes to address the Planning Commission at this time is welcome and encouraged to do so. And please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. See no citizen comments at this time. We'll move on with next item up on our agenda. It's item 2.1, which is the Planning Commission regular meeting minutes from June 15th of 2023. Any amendments, adjustments, typos, errors? Seeing none, looking for a motion in regards to this item on our agenda.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Against? Abstentions? So approved. Next item up on our agenda falls underneath our consent agenda. Begin with item 3.1. The development letter of credit number 4157 for 7-Eleven in the amount of $32,614.40 can be released. Item 3.2, the development letter of credit number 903-26261 for Heritage Hills Phase 3 in the amount of $145,563.71 can be released. Item 3.3, review the final plat for Park Glen Phase 7 located off Park Glen Drive. Item 3.4, review the final plat for Park Glen Phase 8 located off Park Glen Drive. Item 3.5, review the final plat for Beckwith Point located at 472 Belinda Parkway / Summit Boulevard. Item 3.6, review the final plat for Windtree Pines Phase 1A and 2A located at 810 Nonneville Road. Item 3.7, which is a recommendation item back to the Board of Commissioners, is to review the zoning ordinance amendment, Article 6, Commercial District Regulations, Section 6-102, Uses and Structures, Mixed Use / Remove Restriction Area. Item 3.8, a resolution to approve the purchase and sales agreement to purchase the remaining 14.7 acres of land located at 620 Clemens Road for $1,639,300 and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement 37-2023. Item 3.9, a resolution to approve the purchase and sale agreement of the property located at 9904 Lebanon Road, Mount Juliet, located at map 54, parcel 95.1 for $825,000, and to authorize the city manager to sign the agreement and close on the property, number 38-2023. Ms. Hamel.
Staff recommends approval and/or positive recommendation with the conditions that we have listed in our staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions if y'all have any.
Thank you. Shane, anything from Public Works?
We have no additional comments.
Wonderful. Questions or comments from the commission? Seeing no questions or comments at this time, I'd like to call for citizen comments. Any citizen wishing to make comment about any item on our consent agenda is welcome and encouraged to do so. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no citizen comments at this time, we'll be closing our Planning Commission meeting in order to open a public hearing. Public hearing is in regards to item 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6. Item 3.3 is to review the final plat for Park Glen Phase 7 located off Park Glen Drive. Item 3.4 is to review the final plat for Park Glen Phase 8 located off Park Glen Drive. Item 3.5 is to review the final plat for Beckwith Point located at 472 Belinda Parkway / Summit Boulevard. Item 3.6, review the final plat for Windtree Pines Phase 1A and 2A located at 810 Nonneville Road. Anyone wishing to make comment about any one of those 4 items during the public hearing is welcome and encouraged to do so. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no citizen comments at this time, we'll close our public hearing and reopen our Planning Commission meeting, and at which time I am looking for a recommendation in regards to these items on our consent agenda.
Recommend approval of consent agenda.
It's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Against? Abstentions? So approved. Next item up on our agenda falls underneath final master development plans. It's item 4.1, review the amended completion date of Public Works Condition Number 8 for the Bradshaw Farms Phase 1 Final Master Development Plan located off Van Air Road. Shane.
So when this FMDP was initially approved in 2020, under Public Works Condition Number 8, set forth timetables for the Woodridge Place sidewalks, approximately from just past LZ Patton all the way up to the intersection of Golden Bear and Banner at Woodridge. So right there at the intersection before you get into Jackson Hills. In between that time, along with COVID and everything else, the developers had substantial issues in obtaining the easements and were not able to meet the timelines set forth in the initial FMDP. So discussions commenced mid-May with Goodall and Reagan Smith to rewrite these timelines that Public Works and Engineering was adept to. So what they're asking for is pushing the construction completion date back to August, and at which point we would withhold any further building points. They have still not commenced construction of homes at Bradshaw Farms because of this project. Meeting with the developers this week, and I'm going to invite Will Gale to come up. They had done some planning for their sidewalks. They have 3 easements left to obtain. They've already obtained easement acquisition services to close on these easements, but they have wished to further request the construction date timeline, the construction completion date to be pushed back due to materials in short supply, some pedestrian bridges that they'll need to complete the sidewalk. And I'll let Will from Goodall explain more about their delays.
Perfect. Name and address for the record.
Will Gale, 393 Maple Street. So first off, thank you to Shane and staff for working with us throughout this project. I know it's had its ups and downs, but excited to kind of see it come together. So Shane's absolutely right. As we were gathering the last few easements, we started reaching out to our preferred vendors, and the bridge had a longer lead time than we originally anticipated. Their lead time was 50 to 60 weeks, which would put it to the end of next year. And so while we work through the rest of this project, knowing that we couldn't get it completed by August, we want to make sure we're setting the proper expectations and requesting it to be moved to December to accommodate the bridge install.
And just to piggyback off what Will said, there's a letter that you've been provided that outlines their detailed request. And bear in mind, the same stipulations are in place for building permits. So if December 31st, if you grant them that time, comes and goes, and the sidewalk is not completed, no more building permits will be issued for Bradshaw Farms. In addition, as dynamics have changed in construction pricing from 2020 to now, the developer is fully responsible for the costs of the sidewalk. Initially, there was a per lot contribution that was going to go to pay for the sidewalks that the developer was voluntarily contributing. With prices and steep increase since COVID, the per lot contribution will go away in lieu that the developer builds the sidewalk at full price. So there will which that number is going to be greater from estimates that have been provided by Goodall than the contribution that was initially provided at Planning Commission.
Guess the only question I have, I understand the material shortage on, because that's a blue line stream there requiring a TDEC approved bridge. So definitely appreciate that one. What about the ability to acquire the easements to complete the project? Do you think that's realistic, or?
I do. They've
Okay.
they've hired a pretty good easement acquisition expert to finish off the last 3 easements that were remaining. I think there were about 26 or 29 total that had to be obtained. 3 are left.
Oh, wow.
And I'll let Will speak about who they've contracted and speaking to that, but they've notified us that they have somebody on board to commence negotiations, and they are fully aware that they are able to begin construction at their own risk, since they have on these properties they have easements for, and the so-called hammer for this is no more building permits after December 31st, 2024. So they're fully aware of that. So we anticipate them beginning construction in the near future, even though there are 3 outstanding easements. That doesn't stop them from beginning work. And one more thing as well, an LOC will have to be posted for the public sidewalk prior to the signing of the plats, the final plats have already been approved by the Planning Commission.
Very well. So with that being said, let me ask you, you feel comfortable with your ability to acquire your remaining 3 easements?
We do. We hired R&D Enterprise, which is a reputable contractor to go through, and I believe that they've done work with the city of Mount Juliet before gathering easements. So they seem very knowledgeable, ready to go after it. So we provided them the documentation. We've actually got a follow-up meeting with them Monday to see what correspondence they've had with the homeowner so far, and to see what we can do to expedite this process.
Just out of curiosity, are the missing 3, are they contiguous? Are they gaps in between them?
There's gaps in between them.
Okay.
So there's one at the very eastern portion of it, and then there's 2 further in the middle, closer to the Second Creek crossing.
Very well. Further questions or comments from the commission? Thank you so much. That being said, at this time we'll call for citizen comments. Any citizens wishing to make comment on this item on our agenda are welcome and encouraged to do so. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no citizen comments at this time, I'm looking for a motion in regards to this item on our agenda.
Make a motion to approve. Positive recommendation.
That's a motion. I'll second that motion. That's a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Against?
Nay.
Abstentions? So approved. Yes. Next item up on our agenda is item 5.1, falls underneath the PUD amendment, and it is a recommendation item back to the Board of Commissioners. Item 5.1 is to review the PUD amendment for the Mount Juliet Commons sign package located at 12920 Lebanon Road. Mr. Marchetti.
Might be able to cut through this. There are 2 issues that prohibit anything being done. Number one, our code prohibits 2 signs within 200 feet of each other, part 1. And then part 2 is our code prohibits any off-site signs. So you've got a sign within 200 feet, so that's violative of what 111, 103F. And then the second one is an off-site sign, which is prohibited by 11-105L. So there's no variance to be granted here.
So I'm correct in saying in that we have no ability to grant any variance, which means also that the BOC would not have the ability to grant a variance to allow this.
Correct.
Very well. Do we have, please, Mayor?
So you're saying no action can be taken without change to the existing code?
Correct.
Very well. Please, if we have representation for the project, name and address for the record, please.
I think I can speak to both issues together, if I might, tonight. The 200-foot of separation we can achieve. If you've looked at the exhibit in your packet, the lot in question has a triangle piece that comes out in front of Remax and the First Freedom property. So what we're trying to achieve was an equidistant spacing between the Remax First Freedom Monument sign and the existing sign on Mr. or Dr. Bruner's building. So we could slide that sign west, or the proposed sign west, but it would put it about in line with the eastern face of First Freedom Remax. So we can achieve the separation. And then regarding the offsite sign, we could amend the request just to be, a monument sign for the Mount Juliet Commons development, no different than Paddocks has monument signs throughout, right? They're not dedicated specifically, or they are for the users, but they're part of the development. So I think we can achieve both these items. And I failed to mention, staff's been great. This is kind of a unique thing. Dr. Bruner owns both pieces. We're being told he's unable to either consolidate or reset up.
Yep. Come on. And name and address for the record.
Rhett Bruner, 248 Lake Haven Drive. And I'm sorry, I didn't even know you guys were here. So our thing is, like I said, owning both properties. If we didn't have to go through that consolidation, it would just be an easier thing for us. But because I think at first that was the concern, is why it was, one property owned by a different, but it's all owned under the same LLC.
What would staff's recommendation? Would this be something that you'd prefer them to defer and correct the submittal and then come back to us in that case, or?
With the applicant about consolidating the plat. The issue with the previous sign ordinance might have allowed that at that time, but there's, as they said, Mr. Marchetti said that there are two issues with the offsite signage, along with the spacing on it. And that's why we recommended the consolidation plat, in order to get them that additional signage and the marketing potential that they wanted. So I would prefer that they defer and resubmit.
So let me ask you that, Joe, would you guys, that be your desire, or?
And while they're conversing,
Please.
just a little history on Paddocks. That was approved, I believe, in '07 under a completely different sign ordinance through a master plan with their PUD, which I believe that ordinance at the time did allow for that, through a PUD amendment. Of course, our sign ordinance has changed several times since then, and Ms. Johnson's actually working on an overhaul of our sign ordinance now. So I just wanted to give a little history for our new members, especially on that Paddocks offsite signage. Thank you.
Joe?
We would request a 1 meeting deferral as long as staff is in agreement to allow us to resubmit.
At the resubmittal date, we could have it updated and back to you by the.
Be acceptable? Is that a request for a deferral then?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Item 5.1 for the record has been deferred per the request of the applicant. Next item up on our agenda falls underneath land use plan amendments. This will also be a recommendation item back to the Board of Commissioners. It's item 6.1 is review the land use plan amendment from thoroughfare commercial to light industrial for U-Haul self-storage located at 100 Grandview Circle. Jill.
Give you all a little bit of the backstory on this. You probably remember the land use was previously brought before the Planning Commission and denied in 2021. This property was purchased in 2017 by U-Haul, and go back here under the land use amendment. What they are submitting to you tonight is similar to the prior land use amendment that was heard before you, but they are adding a PUD overlay. The future land use currently does not support this request.
Thank you. I know it's only land use only, but I'm going to go ahead and ask Shane, anything from Public Works at this time?
No, sir.
Very well. Thank you. Questions or comments from the commission? Seeing no questions or comments, if we do have representation, be happy to come to the microphone, name and address for the record. If there's anything additional that you'd like to share in regards to the request.
Jeff Porter, 14535 Lebanon Road. I just appreciate any consideration we can get for this property. You know, we've been trying for a long time, as Jennifer said, to try to get something established here so we can, use the property that we purchased and, create value for the property and serve the community with our services.
Very well. Thank you. Questions, comments? Thank you, guys. At this time, we'll call for citizen comments in regards to this item on the agenda. Any citizens wishing to make comment are welcome and encouraged to do so. Please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no citizen comments at this time, looking for a recommendation in regards to this item on our agenda. I'll make a motion for a negative recommendation.
I'll second.
It's a motion and a second for a negative recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Against? Abstentions? Will be a negative recommendation. With that being said,
I think we need to,
3-3 tie, you could have 5 for an affirmative.
so did it tie? Well, I'm sorry.
There's a
What was the
3-3.
vote? So that's a fail.
3-3, it's a no.
It's a no. So it'd be a negative
And it
recommendation.
dies unless somebody at the BLC brings it up.
So with that being said, I know that with that change on land use plan recommendations, Mr. Marchetti, do we continue to move forward and hear the PMDP behind
You
it?
can go ahead and do that.
Very well, thank you. Our next item up on our agenda is also, it's item 7.1, falls underneath the preliminary master development plan. It is a recommendation item back to the Board of Commissioners, is review the preliminary master development plan, PUD, including a rezone from CG to IR PUD for U-Haul self-storage located at 100 Grandview Circle. Ms. Johnson, please.
Bring you a little more backstory on this one. As we stated previously, the land use amendment was previously denied for this. The BOC had ultimately approved an amendment in January of 2017 to remove self-storage from commercial general zoning, which is what the current zoning is for this property. The current owners purchased this property in March of 2017. So the existing ordinance was already in place that removed self-storage from that particular zoning. So therefore, it's not an allowed use in this. Their current request is for this PMDP is to do pods with no customers. It's still considered self-storage, even though there's not supposed to be customers. They're going to be an enclosed type unit. The drawback is with this, it sets a huge precedence with setting industrial zoning in an all commercial district within the city, while you're along a major gateway as well, coming to and from the city while you have those changes. The positive on this would be that that's a current gravel lot. And any changes with it, such as this project, would provide a major improvement on that lot. But again, the zoning does not allow it. So that just kind of gives you a little backstory, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. Shane, Public Works.
The only notable comment that we have is the frontage sidewalk along this property. Portion, Grandview Circle is in the county, so the sidewalk that fronts Grandview Circle will have to be within a public access easement. That is the responsibility of the owner, as county guidelines do not allow sidewalks within the right of way. Other than that, we just have a couple minor comments within our staff report and nothing additional to add. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Questions or comments from the commission? Please, Ms. Johnson.
I want to add a couple of other things. I'm sorry. On the parking, they are currently going to allow for 8 truck parking spaces with 1 handicap accessible. There is no customer parking provided aside from the 1 parallel handicapped parking. The truck parking is to be along the frontage of Lebanon Road to maximize their visibility and advertising on their U-Haul trucks that will be in front of that. Also, some of the requests, the building appears to be 100% brick or stone, which does meet our design guidelines. However, they are requesting metal panels to screen the HVAC. There are a few supplemental provisions that they are requesting. With the self-storage facility, it currently sits upon less than 2 acres in size. It's currently 0.93 acres. However, if they combine the two lots, that would allow them to meet the code of 4.84 acres. There's a few other request supplemental provisions that they have. One is the barrier, where they are requesting that there should be a fence placed along the property line. While it is 100 feet is currently required, the applicant's proposing a fence, of 20 feet off of the property line, along with let's see here. They do have a few additional waivers and variances that they are requesting, such as the self-storage shall not be approved on, again, the lots less than 2 acres. If they did combine, they would meet the code. The barrier that I previously had mentioned, staff would support the barrier around the facility. However, we would request a low maintenance type material such as Trex or a PVC type. Also, the 100-yard requirement adjacent to the residential, we do not support, but originally it was not supported, but after further review, if they would provide the low maintenance type material fencing, we would support this. And also the the panels on the parapet wall that I previously mentioned, we would support that as well. One other additional thing, this is a request for spot zoning. There are currently no other industrial zone properties anywhere in the vicinity of this area. However, should you decide to move forward with a positive recommendation, we would please ask that you include the conditions we've included in our staff report.
Thank you.
So they can't combine those 2 lots to meet the requirement?
Yes, sir, they could, and they would meet that requirement.
One, I guess this is probably back towards Shane and Public Works. Just one question right off the bat that I have is for the retention detention. Are they just capturing that with curb and then piping it over to an existing pond? Is that how this is being handled? Because it's the FFE falls over 20 feet front to back and pours to Grandview. So once we put the impervious surface down, how are we going to keep that from running down Grandview?
When they come through with that potential FMDP, those drainage designs can be fine-tuned and detailed, and we can capture those questions then. At this point in time, these are all conceptual in nature.
Okay.
And we'll tie those in at the FMDP.
Have we looked at the existing ponds for the U-Haul? Because I know that's got age, and were they actually built to today's standards, or should this go through, I guess, an effort to make as many comments as we can back to the BOC as moving forward, positive or negative recommendation? Does that need to be included, that the existing pond should be evaluated to see whether or not it's sufficient to even do this?
That can be evaluated, but we'll get with their engineers and can verify that.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, and just looking at their topo on it, right there at the Grandview entrance, it looks like the FFE at Lebanon Road appears to be 633. FFE down there at the Grandview entrance appears to be 617. So quite a bit of a fall front to back on that. And then looking at C3.0, it appears that it's going to be captured curb and gutter, and then bring it over to an existing pond that's located behind track 1. And that being a older facility, that not sure if it doesn't need to be included to upgrade that pond to meet our current standards and requirements that we have on those.
I would be looking for that pond to be upgraded to standards, but the developer does have engineering representation present tonight if you would like to ask them those questions now.
Perfect. Thank you. Further questions or comments from the commission? Please, Commissioner Rash.
Just a general question, just for my education. Should they choose to combine the properties, this is Jill, would they inherit the zoning and the conditions of the parent tract, or would current zoning prevail? You know what I mean? Okay. And if they chose to combine, the new development would have to meet all of our current regs
Correct.
for the entire site.
Correct.
Gino, I'm not sure if that's accurate. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I believe it's like 50% in our,
I think that's right.
My apologies.
that's okay. It would only come into play if they made improvements to their existing building. And I think the improvements have to be over 50% for them to bring that building into compliance.
Okay.
So they could still combine the lots with no recourse on their existing building. But should they want to improve their building, which we would certainly welcome, that's when that trigger would come into play.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good question. Further questions, comments from the commission? This time, let's go ahead and ask for representation of this project. Name and address for the record, please.
Jess Dillard, 2885 Holloway Road, Lebanon, Tennessee, with Bridgepoint LLC engineer on the project.
Welcome. So, I guess start off there with how are we going to, are you guys going to build the site up, or how are you going to handle, or what are you thinking right now? I know
Yeah,
we're
so-
at PMDP, so
Sure.
just
Yeah,
as
so
initial thought.
There's a couple options. I think what we have shown is catching the stormwater before it runs off onto Grandview and then piping it back to a pond behind the existing building. We've also looked at another option of doing underground detention to where it would basically just be underneath the concrete right there next to the proposed building. So obviously we can finalize that if we get to the
we get to that
FMDP. Yeah.
Shane, what would staff's opinion be if we were to treat it with some type of the impervious concrete to handle that stormwater coming off there? 'Cause, I mean, basically, we're going to take a whole site. Granted, I understand staff saying, hey, we improve it from a gravel lot, but basically, we're also going to change it from a gravel lot to 100% impervious surface if you count the building and the paving, the amount of paving that would go through this. So IE is going to create a lot of stormwater for 104 Grandview Circle, which is a property directly behind it, not to mention Grandview, which also is a road without curb and gutter, and falls down there.
I think one thing to consider here is that this lot is already existing gravel lot. So changing from gravel to pavement or concrete is not a huge difference. There is some difference, but it's not as much as going from a yard to concrete.
Right. Is that a style that you guys would be looking for? Is just a question out of curiosity.
There are multiple ways to tackle it. You could probably pipe it. I would prefer, instead of, in lieu of impervious concrete, I would go with pavers for maintenance and durability. But working with the engineer, we can finalize those at the FMDP. But as of right now, a ditch piping, pervious pavers, there's multiple options to address that.
Questions, comments from the commission? Seeing none, thank you guys. We appreciate it. This time I'd like to call for citizen comments in regards to this item on the agenda. Any citizens wishing to make comment are welcome and encouraged to do so. Please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no citizen comments at this time, looking for a recommendation in regards to this item on our agenda.
A motion for approval with staff comments.
For a positive recommendation, is it
Recommendation.
granting the variances or lack thereof, or granting all variances requests? I know Ms. Hamlin's going to ask me that question.
To add, if you guys are willing to include it in your motion, an alternative to those metal panels. I'm open to a different material than the metal that they have proposed there. And that's one of the variances for sure. I would like clarity on moving forward from this body. Last month or the month before, you guys made a condition on a development to combine the lots. If they were to combine the lots for this project, that would negate a waiver request for the less than 2 acres in size. That's one, if you guys want to consider.
He's just looking.
Say that again. Repeat that, sorry.
Do you remember on the daycare, you guys required them to combine those lots? Should you make it a condition that they combine the lots, that would negate their reasoning for a request for the supplemental provision they can't meet, which is it has to be over 2 acres. in
Right, okay,
size.
yeah.
That would take us out of the approving a spot change. Because then it'll be a combined parcel.
But that was also one was in the county, right?
The only thing is though, to what you're saying is then you'd have one parcel that has 2 different zonings. So you might have been a little confused. So they would still have CG on their existing and it would be IR PUD on. So that's only to get out of the
2 acres.
2 acres.
requirement.
Right. It'll still be spot zoning. It'll still be industrial zoning for this.
The zoning on the the zoning on the piece in question is going to stay what it is, whether the parcels are combined or not.
Yes, sir. It'll stay what the request is tonight, which is an IR PUD.
But that would address 3104A at least. The 2 acre.
3104.7, yes. The 2 lot. Unless you guys are willing to grant that, I don't care either way, but that is a way to have one less variance request.
For okay with that moving along. I guess at the end of the day, doesn't matter what we do if this doesn't come back from somebody doesn't sponsor it at the BLC for the land use anyway.
Right,
That would be correct.
so I,
So is that a motion stand for a positive recommendation?
with all
Aaron,
staff comments,
With
right?
staff comments,
I'll
including
second
the
that.
granting of the variances?
Correct.
May I, with that right there, may I request the comments in regards to retention, detention be included if it should ever move to FMDP? That's handled
Certainly.
appropriately, including the possible upgrade of the pond that is off of this site? It's a motion and a second for a positive recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? That is a positive recommendation. Please. Please.
Sorry, Gino. So Tyler, for Tyler's sake, that PMDP will not move forward until a sponsors the land use plan. Correct. Okay, thank you. He has to assign a date tonight, so I wanted to be clear for that.
Very well. That's a great one. We're still sorting our way through this one. Yes. Next item up on our agenda falls underneath item 7.2. It is a recommendation item back to the Board of Commissioners to review the preliminary master development plan PUD, including a rezone from RS40, CRC, and CG to RM8 PUD and CRC PUD for the bluffs at Cedar Creek located on Lebanon Road. Ms. Johnson.
little backstory on this one as well. The land use amendment was brought forth before the Planning Commission in April of this year and was denied. Subsequently, the land use was brought back to the BOC by a sponsor with Commissioner Justice, and ultimately it passed unanimously, pending the approval of the PMDP. So therefore, that is why this is back before you tonight. So just to give you a little history on that. On the land use amendment. This project is for 170 townhomes, of which they are requesting 10 to 15 of the units be over the top of the commercial, which is 2 buildings up front of this property, which encompass 3.1 acres and 7,500 square foot. One of the questions that have come forth, and we have asked that the 10 to 15 units over the commercial, that exact number will need to be nailed down before this goes to first reading of the BOC. They have removed the front-loaded villas that were originally on the north end of this project when it was brought before you as well. They have also added a secondary ingress-egress as part of this PUD. Some of the residential changes as well is that they have also, the driveways previously were not 22 feet in length. They are now. There are 751 total parking spaces that are being provided. That is an additional 77 spaces. There's also no changes to the amenity package. Staff has, though, requested a water spigot for the pet cleanup station at the dog park. We went over the commercial addition to the front portion of this. This would also, the commercial portion would be under commercial retail center zoning, which is currently allowed with the exception of gasoline sales and animal care. The requested waivers and variances, they are requesting to omit portions of the perimeter fence and utilize ornamental fencing where it conflicts with a stream and buffer. Staff would like to request on the westerly portion of this, on the residential buffer, that they do a low maintenance type fence of Trex or PVC. They are also wanting to request that either 85 of the houses or 50% of the homes be reduced on the required brick of 100% to 10 to 50% brick. Staff supports a minimum of 25% brick or stone as part of our commercial design standards. And also, let's see here, they are asking relief from the occupancy limited, where any dwelling or rooming unit provided or permitted under the provisions of this section shall be limited to occupancy by the persons employed in the principal non-residential activity. So basically, you would need to own that commercial business in order to live in it. They're requesting relief from that so they could rent it out essentially. The Board of Commissioners has a right to grant the conditional use permit under a PUD. Therefore, the applicant has requested to allow residential occupancy be open under this commercial portion. That commercial business, they're wanting to open it up to rent it out if they needed to. So the Board of Commissioners would have that right once this goes before the Board of Commissioners, whether it is with a negative or positive recommendation. Should the PC decide to move this forward with a negative or positive recommendation, we request that all conditions that staff has provided be forwarded along.
Thank you. Shane, anything from Public Works?
Most of our comments are the same from the original report back in April. Signal warrants at 50 and 90% of the build out. The big caveat is from the traffic study when Andy reviewed it, was a right turn lane into the site, but due to right-of-way restrictions, a northbound through lane will be installed at the Mount Juliet Road, Lebanon Road intersection, which in turn will yield 2 left turns, a through lane, and a right turn lane. So 4 lanes total as part of this project. And the developer will be working with staff on right of way as necessary. The addition of a roundabout within the development that will have to meet design guidelines at the construction plan phase, And I do want to add one more comment that all sewer on the site shall be public, including the pump station, as they've got proposed within a 20-foot easement, unless if that's the condition, the roads are not public.
Very well. Questions or comments from the commission?
Going back to that, the one condition as far as the ownership of the, would you repeat that again? The,
Basically, what it allows is the occupancy is limited under commercial structures. What the code is referencing is you would need to own that commercial business in order to live there. The Board of Commissioners has the right to provide a conditional use under 8-2-1.5 that allows them to open up that occupancy to other tenants. So, but the Board of Commissioners would be the ones that would have to pass that at first and second reading.
okay.
I just want to clarify that this isn't a typical mixed-use building, which is why you've never heard us say that. They're asking for straight CRC zoning with accessory residential occupancy, which is why we have that conditional use as required, as it's listed in our zoning ordinance that way. And as part of that residential occupancy in commercial, you have 3 different regulations that they have to meet, which is listed in our staff report. And they have agreed to meet all of those, but did want the flexibility to rent those to just whoever, or not rent, sell those to whoever they wanted to, and not be in relation to the building like a traditional
Yeah.
mixed use building.
That's what I was thinking.
I just don't know that we've seen that here very often. I can think of, there used to be a little coffee shop across the street, and they lived in the upstairs. So it'd be something similar to that.
Or they could lease it or whatever, they put whoever else in there if they wanted to, is what
Yes,
the,
sir.
yeah.
I just think it opens the market up for them. They didn't originally ask
Yeah.
for that, but after reading through there, I've reached out to their representatives and I was like, hey, don't need to ask for this. It makes perfect sense, and we certainly support it.
Very well. Questions or comments? Please.
One other note that I'd like to add on this is to actually have throughout the neighborhood, no parking signs on the street, on the roadway. So when we have issues with some other places around here with the townhomes that they do park on the roadways, and at night we have no access for the fire department to get in there.
These are going to be, you've looked at it, these will be sprinkled, right?
Correct.
So give you a little bit more vote of comfortability with that.
Correct.
Something-
But still, we need to limit the parking and on the roadways though.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, one of the comments. Fire Marshal, we have asked for them to include parallel parking on the streets, not, they're going to include parking on the street in designated areas outside of the roadway. But I can make
No
sure
parking
that-
in like.
But no parking all along the main drive is what you're asking for.
And that's to be enforced by their HOA instead of our police officers, since it's private streets. Because it's-
Matter of fact, that was a question that I had for us as I saw parallel parking referenced within staff comments, but then as I look at the plan, I saw 0 parallel parking on the plan. So you guys are going to be working directly with them to identify the appropriate areas. And I'm assuming they'll just be bump outs to the roads as we see them here today, should those
Yes, sir.
create themselves. Yeah, because the guest parking was going to be one of the comments there, but then I figured that the parallel would solve that, but just didn't see the parallel. I've got several questions. Yeah. So a couple different things here that I have. Just as I initially looked at this right here, just because we've looked at a couple of plans similar to this in the past, and the big question for me was going to be in regards to when I see one that's especially adjacent or pinned between larger tracts and parcels of land, that it's appropriate to make sure that we have identified a master plan, and particularly accessibility for who's first in line. And in this case, this is first in line right here. And so my question back to staff is, as you guys have evaluated this, do you guys feel that we have the appropriate, because it looks like for the property to the east of it, we have one place, and that's right off the roundabout. Yet we do have a and maybe it's expired by this point in time, we had an approved plan directly behind Burger King as well. So if that property to Burger King ever develops, which they do not have, my understanding is when we approved that one, that it didn't go all the way back to Cedar Creek, so therefore they wouldn't have access to the roundabout. So does that mean that we'd have Burger King, an entrance to another piece of property, and then the entrance to this? Because that, I mean, I don't, to my knowledge, that approved plan is not expired.
That site plan has expired,
It
and
has?
they had some of their building package delivered, and actually, I think Mr. Lineberry purchased it for another building down the street. They have walked away from that project.
So have we looked at connectivity off of Road A? Should those develop again? Right there behind, I guess I'm just looking that if right there, your most attractive is always your ones closest to the main thoroughfare. So if we looked at accessibility, or are we going to have the ability to get easements to those properties to the east and or i.e. the west, or the one right down the middle of this? And how are we going to design all of that?
Traffic's totally not my thing, but I don't think it's out of the question to ask the applicant to provide those easements. I mean, you can certainly make that part of your condition, that as this plan, if it moves forward, that we'd like to see some connectivity points along that main road to the property to the east there.
Perfect.
I think that's a very valid
And I don't see a sign denoted on the plan. Do they plan to have a sign at the entrance? I see landscape plans to be included as part of an FMDP, but don't see any potential sign location. Is there not going to be any
They have
sign?
not indicated that, and of course they wouldn't at this point in the conceptual phase.
Okay.
But you're right, there's limited spacing for
Space and
that.
availability for a sign there. And some of them will come up for the applicant here. And I guess one more, this is back towards a staff comment here, and the rest of them will probably be directed towards the applicant. When it comes to the waivers and variants, we've got number 6 is 2 garage doors should be provided with a 2-foot brick column to separate. Garage doors should be carriage style. And I know that's part of our subdivision ordinance that requires that out there. And generally that's in reference to front facing garages. With these being alley load, or at least a central portion of it, I guess.
Actually, I would consider this, while they consider it alley load, rear load, because you don't have that main streetscape that you do with your typical alley load. So
Right.
all you're going to be seeing is the back of those garages, which is why I made the request. It's not a hill worth dying on for me, but
Yeah.
I like to be consistent.
And then a minimum of the 25%, back to item 4 on the waivers. Request to allow 85 or 50% of the homes to reduce the required brick from 100% to 10 to 50% brick or stone. Staff supports a minimum of 25%.
It just looks real heavy on looking through those
Siding.
elevations on the hardy. And actually, I would like for y'all to specify hardy, because
Yes.
I don't believe their secondary material is specified.
I agree. I was looking as I was running from the storms today, I was looking at another neighborhood in a adjacent municipality that's got some new development close to Lebanon Road. I know this really won't be able to see this off Lebanon Road, but I was conscious of the properties developing surrounding it right there. And the fronts looked awesome.
Yeah, they're great.
But from Lebanon Road, I couldn't see anything but the sides and the back. And they were taking a ride on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
All
I
the way
thought the
through.
side and rear elevation looked a little bland, so
Yes.
I was thinking adding a little.
Yeah, and it was 100%, actually 100% hardy on this development
Yeah.
in question, but it was just monolithic,
It is.
just all the same.
Yeah.
And no variation, nothing shaking and nothing to, as you go down the road to really say, man, I want to be there. Further questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Rash, please.
Just questioning the alienated commercial out parcel in the middle there, the 2 roads. Is Road F really necessary?
I would say for emergency services, yes, for me, but I'm not fire.
I would agree with. I do, irregardless, it does serve as an emergency access. If for some reason, we do have a weather event that hits and those people need to get out, at least there's another way for them to exit that subdivision.
And to piggyback on that, Road F will be utilized for the commercial space, that out parcel space, once it's developed. Hope I'm speaking correctly saying that. There won't be another road in the middle to access that commercial. They will utilize Road F as their main ingress egress.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that actually came from us to include that in the PUD. We got a little nervous the last time we saw this, that it wasn't included in the PUD. And for emergency services, we all know tornado. We had lots of people that we couldn't get out of there. So we feel a lot more comfortable having Road F on the plans included in this PUD.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and ask for representation in regards to this project. Microphone and name and address for the record.
Nathan Quinn, 402 B&A Drive, here representing the developer 4-Star. We did put together a small presentation, and staff did a great job of outlining almost everything I was going to outline. So thank you very much for covering everything you did. But we just tried to help everyone get a little bit more of an idea of what this community is going to look like. And they're correct in all the changes that we made on the commercial. And you can kind of see here in the front, there's a lot of questions about, the future development in this area and how it ties together. And what we spent a lot of time doing is talking to the adjacent property owners and trying to understand what their visions are. And the plan that Luke referenced before he started coughing was accurate about the property to the east. And what we're trying to do is make sure that what we do as the first piece of the puzzle is not do anything to hinder the development of all these adjacent commercial parcels. So what we've kind of strived to do from working with staff is make sure that the road that you see coming in off Lebanon Road, the primary road A, is adjacent and touching the property to the east. So they'd have the opportunity to tie in depending on exactly what the configuration would be to where they don't have to come off the roundabout. And the same with the property to the north, or I guess it'd be the west, that one right there. And the idea behind the secondary connection to the commercial is that would always stay there on Lebanon Road and at the roundabout. And just depending on the configuration of the commercial property, it would just be a secondary access to that property and back to Lebanon Road as well. But you can kind of see we spent a lot of time talking to everybody to make sure that if a road and when it does tie into Meb Court, that the adjacent property, has to meet city road standards was the direction we tried to follow in our PUD documents from working with staff to ensure the ability of planning and the elected body to make sure that ties back to Meb Court. Staff did a great job. They covered, all this stuff, CRC. And just up here is just a great example of the type of buildings that we're proposing is that commercial. So it allows true first floor commercial is the intent. Anywhere from like a insurance agency to a salon, all those great allowable uses under the CRC zoning, and then allows condos above. And they're correct about we need to bump our unit count and cap it at approximately 180 for the total count for the community, 10 of those being allocated for that commercial portion for those condos above. But yeah, we have more examples of the community. They covered a lot of this. We have a 2,000 square foot pool house centralized in the community off of that linear park. We have a 2,500 square foot pool. We have a half-acre dog park in the rear of the site. Tried to pick a good spot. It flattens out back there by the creek, and it also allowed us to kind of maintain that existing pasture area as just a passive amenity. There's over 3 acres of just open, flat grass fields back there. And that portion that you see right there, I wasn't so shaky, is the Greenway extension as part of the city's Greenway plan. So as part of our development, we would tie in to the north property, and then that would actually run along the bluffs, and you can kind of see, man, my voice is cracking too. You can kind of see it right here along the top of that bluff. So we thought if we're going to put this in here as that plan comes to fruition, as these adjacent properties develop, it gives all the citizens of Mount Juliet the opportunity to walk along this bluff and enjoy that great view. And to give an idea behind the concept for this community, the linear park that would be centralized, and we didn't want to have a sea of asphalt. So what we're like, why are we going to have road 1, 2, and 3? Let's make the central road a pedestrian boulevard instead of a vehicular boulevard. And the idea behind that being, we want people to be able to come home drive into the rear of their house, come out their front door with their kids or their dogs, take a walk. You don't have to worry about your kid falling off their bike into the street or a dog getting off the leash and running into the road and having to deal with traffic. And just gives it a real sense of community. It gives it a real sense of seclusion and allows us to develop this community out. And then that commercial portion in the front further provides that seclusion. So people come along that roundabout, it gives them that real privacy back here in the community. And a lot of the things we worked on with staff between our first meeting back in April and now, is Shane again did a great job outlining all this stuff, was the proposed offsite improvements. So we didn't warrant a signal at our tie-in, and we actually line up directly with Meadowview Drive? I'm forgetting the name, Morningside Drive. But we line directly up with that intersection, and we are working with our engineers to make sure that we can get a signal warrant justified with this community development to not only support, because we all know trying to turn left out of there to go back to Publix would be very tough, regardless of the time of day. So figuring out how to do that now does things to support the community, but also does great things to support any future commercial development, because that allows that stuff to be in place day one, that infrastructure, and lets us do all the heavy lifting there. And then Shane again did a great job of outlining the plan we worked on with Andy Barlow before he moved on to TDOT. And we are able to do the improvements that you see here within the existing curb limits. So we wouldn't have to do this major invasive construction project and push sidewalks out, purchase additional right-of-way. We can do all this within the existing right-of-way. And the good thing about this improvement too is that we can do a lot of this work at nighttime hours. So we can mill and pave and restripe and things like that, and then work with city and state to adjust the signal timing to help that function better. Because we all know if you're trying to go to Publix across the street, that length, that queue length at that straight / left turn lane is probably double, if not triple, regardless of the time of day. So that's all stuff that we've tried to really work on with staff and elected officials to identify close proximity things that benefit, that directly serve the community, but also benefit Mount Juliet as a whole. And someone touched on it, that our streets would be private and wouldn't be a burden on the city in terms of tax dollars. And the only thing planning staff covered are requested relief on that item B to allow us to rent or sell the condo units above. I think we're only asking as a community for 10% rentals, and more than 2 units can be owned by any one person, to kind of minimize if those are rentals. And then the garage door, we just wanted to say that we can absolutely commit to making it carriage style or decorative in nature to minimize just having this flat plain facade. And given that this is going to be the primary streetscape, that it's going to benefit our home building partners to make sure these things pop and look great and are inviting from the front or the rear elevations. And then the last thing that we were concerned with was just the CO restriction being tied to the commercial at the 100 C of O. And we just wanted to make sure that as people approach this community, as they're building these townhomes, that they have that market window to be able to see the community in the linear park and allow the residents to see what it's going to look like before we hide it and mask it with a commercial construction site. So we were asking to add that as phase 3 to our schedule to allow the opportunity for the residential to build out and then directly reinforce that commercial development, not only here, but adjacent to the property. I think I'm done, and that's it for now. And if you have any questions, we have Joe Haddock from Civil Site here and be happy to answer them. Thank you. I think I took more than what I should have.
couple as you get started here. Do you guys think that you put a sign out there at Lebanon Road?
We
Or-
absolutely can, just to advertise the development. Is that what you're referring to?
Or just your monument sign noting whatever you're going to call the
Excuse
neighbor
me.
bluffs
I
at Cedar
misunderstood.
Creek or
What we had talked through was most likely maybe putting that inside of the roundabout.
so all the way off, nothing at Lebanon Road, but within the
That's not what
development
we had
itself.
discussed. No.
Okay. Is there a place where you could get some lighting at your entrance right there, at least in the meantime?
On Lebanon Road?
Mhm.
I think that's something we could work with. I guess I don't know if that'd be up
Just
to
some
the state, but
couple
on
deck-
our road, absolutely.
Yeah, just a couple decorative street lights right there.
Mhm.
And then how can, and this would be back for staff. So if we take road A that's coming up there, the main drive off there, and we want connectivity off of that to the parcels to the east outside of the roundabout, is there anything that we need for a easement design? Because it's really up to, I mean, it's your guys' property, so you'd be having to let us come off of your road too, since it is a private drive.
For access on that drive and on the drive itself.
Okay.
I think Joe Haddix can answer that more effectively than me too.
Let me ask you a couple more real quick, Nathan.
It's public road to the roundabout.
It's public road to the roundabout?
That was the way we could ensure that everybody that wanted to could access that and do a driveway cut where needed to make sure those commercial parcels and then the adjacent property to the east. So my apologies for misspeaking on that.
No, that's okay. And then understanding that you guys are going to work with staff on the identification for the parallel parking within the site itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's opportunities to add some more parking throughout.
Did you guys look at gating the community?
At whatting the community? Excuse me?
Gating it? Making it a gated community?
Oh, gating it.
Yeah.
I could have sworn. I thought you said dating.
Yeah,
it.
dating
I was
community,
is
yeah.
Is that a new development term
Yeah.
I'm not aware of?
Yeah, we got the 55 plus, so yeah, there we go. But yeah, gated community.
So we did look at that, but because of the commercial and we absolutely could. But I think how we have it configured right now, we weren't planning on gating it.
And just a couple more smalls right there. Just back there, and I appreciate you. We had another project came before us, and they had a nice dog park as you guys have laid out right here. And there's nowhere for the water for the dog, so you would have to walk back or bring it. Just a nice little thing there. But
Right.
I guess if it goes forward, comes to PMDP, just maybe the addition of another bike rack back there, some benches, even maybe a little. Doesn't even have to be big, but have a little shade so that as you're sitting there with your dog on a humid day like today would be, before Mother Nature decided to change it a little bit on us, somewhere to sit, somewhere to grab a piece of shade or whatnot, to really make that good for the dogs, but good for the people that are going to be sitting back there with them as well. The other one that I've got is towards your request on, you heard me mention about the facade over there and the request to go back and alternate building materials. So I know this would be a little bit more towards you guys than Joe. Your front facades look great and your commercial facades look great on the front.
Mhm.
Sides and the rear, which it appears that if I'm driving down the road, I am going to see the back. I mean, am I right? So if I'm driving down the road, this is what I see, right?
If you're within,
If I'm in a car, that's what I'm
that's
looking
right. If you're within the community, absolutely, yes. Once you pass, the commercial portion, you're in the development, you would see those rear elevations. Yes, sir.
And is it just the height right there and your ability to carry brick up those? Is that what's
It was
making
more.
that where you
It
don't
was more
find
just
it
a
desirable?
representation, and I think that as we get closer to the point of building that out, and because it's unique from the perspective of we don't have that typical boulevard for vehicles down the middle, that we're gonna have to work to make sure that these rear elevations look really great.
And
But if
that's
there's a recommendation on how to make sure that happens, I mean, we're open to that.
and that's my only reluctance in saying, hey, just take it 10% or even 25% of exterior facade materials right there. You got a cantilever or the potential for a cantilever deck right there because you're not going to be able to post down because you're building setbacks. You're going to have to tie that structurally back into your unit itself right there.
Right.
Which if you do have a 16-foot garage door right there in a 20-foot wide building, it's not going to leave you very much room. I would have reluctance. I'm assuming these buildings are 20-foot wide.
They are, yes, sir.
Each unit is 20-foot wide, so you got a 16-foot garage door, so it's only leaving you 2 feet. If we do a 2-foot, if we meet staff's request and we go with 2 separate carriage style right there with 2 foot, you're really not going to be able to get out of your car in your garage. So that means that all your parking is going to be in your driveway. So,
Right. Or just the total width, yes, sir.
yeah.
Yep.
So my reluctance or my initial reaction would be to allow you to have the 16-foot garage door and not have to go to 2/8 with the 2-foot post down right there. But in just because we need your garage to be functional. You
Right.
got to be able to open a car door inside this thing.
We wanted to allow variety in the development and not mandate, this type or this type. So we wanted them to be able to have the variety and have a structure. Maybe one or two of them have these 2-car garage doors and some have singles or a single double door, not a single garage door. So we just want to leave that up to creativity to allow people to create that variety because again, this is going to be part of their storefront is to make sure these rear elevations really look great.
Yeah. And about the only one that I just struggle with is that's small of a reduction down to alternative than brick and stone building materials because you got a couple of good points to where you could almost water table around these things. Go with brick, bring your hardy material or different or an alternate material outside of vinyl. We don't want that. I'm sure you don't want that either. You've got a couple of good structural points from an architectural standpoint that you could still achieve that. But I want it to look as good here as it does here.
Absolutely.
And this is not exciting. This is exciting.
I agree.
And if the common person, if I'm going to visit my neighbor, and this is all that my only experience with it, it's just not exciting. And it's an opportunity to do something beautiful there because it is a pretty piece of land. And that's just one comment back right there. Have one more. Make sure that covered. That might be it. Yeah, I think my only hesitation was going to be to stoplight right there. I just trying to come to terms in my mind. And I guess if everything develops, one's going to come, whether or not it's you guys or whatever develops around you eventually, but just can't. I guess I remember when Lebanon Road and Mount Juliet Road first became a stoplight. And then you're about to get to the point where you're going to have Green Hill, Novel, and right here, and then Mount Juliet Road, and then you got Park Glen, and then you got Bender's Ferry, and it's just becoming a stoplight road through there as well. But if everything develops, whether or not it's through your guys' property or something else, a stoplight right there at some point in time is going to be warranted, whether or not it's on you guys or not. That's all I got. I guess my only other comment would be, just because I've been discretionary on this on other projects going forward. And you've got a really nice clubhouse proposed here, really big pool proposed here. Love those. And you got your tot lot proposed right here. But then also 177 people to accommodate all of that. Then you're going to pop the only place I go to get my mail right in the middle of all of that as well. That just seems like an inherent challenge. So I would challenge you to see if you can find a better, maybe just a little spine to turn off as you guys explore this parallel parking, to maybe move your mailbox kiosk away from that so that those people enjoying your amenities can enjoy them, not having to block people in, just so they can do something simple as check their mail.
Right. I think that's something we can easily look at and kind of tweak to make it more functional. Absolutely. Great suggestion.
Please, Mayor.
I guess my questions has to deal with You were asking for, I believe, relief on that 100th CO.
Yes, Mayor.
Without that, how do we ensure that the commercial is constructed? I mean, that's, for me, that's one of the main reasons that I'm even willing to reconsider this in the first place, because that was my biggest drawback from the original design. It was just 100% residential, nothing remotely walkable to it unless you're going to Burger King.
And I understand the concern and the question, and it's not our intent to get around building anything. It's more of a function of, if this is a storefront and the first thing that's going to go vertical are homes, we don't want to immediately to have a commercial construction site at your primary entrance. So they're gonna fight each other for territory, and it's just going to make the entrance look bad. And we want to be able to gain some momentum on our marketing window and start building out this community. And I mean, as we all know, that it reinforces that commercial, and then be able to find the best time to construct that. But we're willing to commit to that, to phase 3, or work through a reasonable alternative to the 100 C though.
Yeah.
Or another alternative.
And I hear the concern. I don't know how we marry the two together properly to make sure everything's, well, just something to consider between now and BLC, unless someone with deeper wisdom than myself can come up with a suggestion.
We're already getting a lot of questions about it. If it makes everybody feel better, it's more of a timing issue than making sure we're not making both properties look bad at the same time, and allow that marketing window to get it off the ground, and then roll into capping it at the end with the commercial to then provide that seclusion. But totally valid. I mean, I get it. It's tough, because I know that I'm talking to staff and elected officials that it's happened on other projects where they push back like we're doing, and then it doesn't get built. So we absolutely understand the logic, but I know we're not trying to repeat the sins of others. We're just.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of scars from the past there.
Sure.
So.
Question?
We're going to add something. Wayne Miller,
Perfect.
402 B&A Drive, 4-star. I know you'd probably get me up on that one. So now when we look at it, it is tough to make those decisions, especially when you have two different entities that are playing off one another. So I look back at even what we tried to accomplish a year ago, and we just got the approval for it, I guess back in March or April, for the Villages of Green Hill over there on Green Hill Road. And it's a combination of commercial, it's a combination of residential. And we're still trying to have the conversation with our builder partners as well as the commercial entities, because they're talking to us about the schedule that's going to take to get their approvals, and then how they marry that up with the building partners. Our building partners are talking about, how do I commit to a contract to build X number of homes and commit to this community, knowing that a commercial entity may or may not finish their site. So now I'm left with a half-built community. And so we're in this long dance, and we have been, and it's kept us from moving forward with that deal. And frankly, I don't know if we will be able to move forward with that deal in the FMDP, because we're constantly battling that for the last 3 or 4 months with no insight. It's just a revolving door. We have a lot of commercial interest, and then it's just the question. So I think for us on this is, we again have a lot of commercial interest, not only here, but we are talking to the adjacent property owners. They also have some pretty amazing plans, but it is the chicken and the egg. It's these rooftops. I know it's tough to hear at times, and we all do know this, that the residential rooftops, especially for a corridor like this on a state highway, is going to drive the commercial growth. And it's not the other way around. So having this really will be a catalyst to bolster it. And we're fully committed to doing the commercial on here. We just need to have a conversation on when that timing actually needs to occur, whether that's we put a stipulation on within 3 or 4 years. And that being said, that could be something where the residential doesn't take off for whatever reason, and we're still obligated by that. But by doing a C of O, we're leaving ourselves, we're leaving the builder, we're leaving the commercial, ultimately we're leaving the city in a situation where you could potentially have an unbuilt, halfway finished development and now it's an eyesore for everybody. Whereas the vision here is the linear park. It is the amenity. It is the walkability. It is something new and different for townhomes in this city. And when you come up with that roundabout to see that vision take place, that is part of it. The other part is just trying to marry them two together.
Other question, Road A, that's drawn as a 2-lane road currently?
Correct, with the boulevard.
If that's going to have commercial connectivity onto that, wouldn't it be wise to go ahead and get the turn lane in place now?
I think that's something we were already going to be doing anyways. Like that was already something we were committed to. And then
when it's drawn, it just looks like a 2-lane.
It does. And Mayor, I know Luke was talking about or asking about the signage, and that's something that we are working with the property owner that is retaining that portion of the commercial on the front, as far as having the agreements in place, the cost share, work on the signage. I think what we all don't want to have happen is it be blocking any visibility and sight lines. We already have a pretty robust plan that we're working on for hours on the roundabout, but we'd have to come up with something, and we'd work with staff just to figure out how that needs to look so that we don't have any visibility issues on the main frontage on Lebanon Road.
That's all I've got.
Further questions or comments from the commission?
Got a couple.
Please, Commissioner Rast.
I'll keep it short for everybody's benefit. Just want to echo Luke's comments about the rear loading versus the way the fronts look that would be facing that linear park. Adding dormers, adding any type of gable ends, things like that, just something to break those up so it just doesn't look like no offense to those folks in Chicago, so it doesn't look like a bunch of row houses. So that there's some character to them. And I fully agree with the mail kiosk. I live in a development where my mail kiosk is at the very front of our development, and we live at the very back of it, and that's just not convenient.
And God bless the
anybody.
USPS.
Yeah. What the land to the west of Road F? What is that remnant going to be? Is that planned to go commercial at some point, or?
Yeah, right. We don't control that, and I don't even believe the underlying seller does. So I don't have any idea what those plans might be for that strip immediately adjacent. That's right in the property line.
Oh, that your property line runs along Road F?
Correct.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay. And I don't know if I can even ask this question, Gino. Slap me if I can. Just a point of curiosity, has nothing to do with decision making. But what do you have an approximate price point for these townhomes? And if I can't ask it, tell me to shut up.
We don't. Just from our projections on what they would be, I wouldn't imagine they'd be anything less. They'd probably start in the 375s, upper 300s, and once they're optioned up, they're in the mid to high 4s. I'd say with some of the builders we've talked to and some of the plans you've seen, some of the people here have even gone on tours of them, and I don't mind saying it's Toll Brothers. They're a fantastic builder, do some great stuff, and so there's a lot of difference in architecture. But shoot, some of those townhomes are in the 5s and 6s, and so we don't mandate any of that,
right?
But that's what we're hearing from the building partners that we're working with.
Okay, and square footage is average?
All the ones that we're talking to are 1,800 upwards to even, I think when they have those 3 stories, they're even encroaching close to that 3,000 range, but typically between 18 and 28.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Sure. Yeah, I know you were talking about the 100 CO completion. What is your thought of commitment of completing of starting completing the commercial part of it? I know we said we don't want to do 100 at 100. Release it, but what are we thinking?
Are you asking what is the thought behind why we?
No, I know why, but what is the number? Like when are you going to do it? When is it going to be done?
Yeah, for us, what we would actually like to do is either put a year on it, on what that year needs to be, based on what we project the build out of our development to be as far as the residential component. I'm also comfortable with doing 170, and that's where I'd like to be. That still leaves the 10 units above the commercial, but it gives us the freedom and flexibility. And I'll be honest, ultimately, I don't think it comes up if the condition's not on here. That's what's so interesting about even the other piece that we have is if that condition is not on there, we have plenty of commercial people that are interested in that property.
Sure.
It's just they're trying to figure out, is it going to take me 15 months to get my site plan approved and go through the process, FMDP, the other things that go through, and then what's it going to take me to actually go vertical on it and have it done? And so that's the issue we're coming with. So if we can put it on 170, if we're being honest with one another, I'd rather the condition just be stripped completely, or we just say by the final CO, we can have that. The commercial will be done. That's the reason we're putting it there, because we have interest. It's just, it's making it hard where we just can't have the situation come up to where we have an unfinished development and then no commercial goes here.
Right.
So we chose COs because that's what I counted that's listed in phase one.
Sure,
So
yeah.
the commercial as shown on our plans is shown in phase one. And honestly, I'm not a realtor and I'm not a developer, but I think we've got it wrong here, because it doesn't look to me like they're showcasing their linear park that they want to market for this development, because right there is their commercial development that I think is going to drive people to buy these houses. I mean, you see right there that they're marketing to you to get this commercial building.
And that's my
So-
thought is, what is the pushback of the 100 opposed to 170 when we're marketing? This is the marketability of the project. So that's the only reason why I asked the question was, because I understand, that's going to be the construction site. That's where most of the stuff's going to be. So you got these new residents coming in, you got this construction site in the front, but I mean, that's part of new construction. I mean, I do it all the time. So it's always a construction site in phase one. So I was just wondering what we came back with a commercial component, but then we don't want to. I'm just trying to see what the hesitancy is around the 100 opposed to the 170. That's all. That's the only reason I asked the question.
Yeah, it's risk. It's when you're spending tens of millions of dollars to develop the whole site and then have the pads done in conjunction with that. Our intent is to put those pads in. The horizontal work's done.
Yeah.
Everything's ready. It'll be seed and straw. You have grass, mature landscaping that's going in. Support. It's not this vacant sea of gravel pads that you're going to see when you come up there. But the risk is, again, if we put in tens of millions of dollars, we commit to the offsite improvements on the front edge, we commit to the offsite improvements on North Mount Juliet Road. We do all these things. We create a community that is private where we don't have a taxpayer burden. We do all these great things. And then for whatever reason, something happens and we have to stop. We're in the hole.
Right.
And we're dead.
But on the flip side, if something happens and we say 170, then we have the hole in the front with no commercial that we said we're going to do. So, I mean, it's kind of like mitigation of risk. So to me is like, if we're going to talk about risk, then it has to be, X amount of commercial structures by, maybe one or two. I don't know what the number is. I don't know, but we got to share the risk. In my opinion is if we're going to say 170 units, then the city has all the risk, right? If we say if there's 10 commercial buildings, we're going to have 2 by the time we have 100, then now we have some risk that we're kind of mitigating. I'm just saying there needs to be a mitigation of risk between the two parties.
And so again, when you see it from the commercial side too, because we talk to all the commercial developers too, and that's again, it's the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
Especially for this, when you hear the ideas that are going here, they're not saying I'm going to put this in and the townhomes are going to come. They're saying we want to see all the growth here to support our commercial interest as well. And so that's where it's tough for us when you're dealing with two different entities. That's all I'll say. There's not many builders and developers that do both. There's just not. And so we're trying to find that balance too. I'm trying to find the balance as well. And that's why I've always said, can we not make it over a course of a 3 or 4 year period from the start, that when we get if we're fortunate enough to get approved, when we get our land disturbance permit to start putting infrastructure in the ground, the clock's ticking. It's imperative for us to get going on everything. And if we build everything out and sell everything, great. If we don't, we know that we're capped at that limit and we cannot move forward anymore until a vertical building is going.
Respectfully, it is so much easier for our building department to keep up with number of CO on triggers than years.
Sure.
And so
Well, I
that's
mean, we
what
just went through it
always
with the
say
sidewalk,
that.
right? So we
Yes.
just went through the same thing. So
Let me piggyback what Gerard is saying over here real quick. I just did some rough math. I'll show you this real quick. So you got Road A where it connects to Road B right here, creating your three-way intersection.
Okay.
That everything from Road B back, if I'm correct, is right at 50 units.
I don't have the count, but you're saying from Road B on like the western
Yeah,
boundary of that
everything
three-way?
from here to the end of your
And
roundabout is approximately 50 units.
Okay.
Looks like it. If I'm doing the math right, and this is representative,
He's
true
talking about
representative
here,
of the many
back.
units and your placement units, looks like that's going to be 50. So why not 127? That way it gets where mitigation of risk and gets the city 50, gets you over 0.75% built out at that point in time. That seems like a fair mitigation between
Well,
everybody.
I hear what you're saying. And I agree. We have to find that balance. I don't have the answer for that. What I can point to is it's even been longer than 3 months, but I'll just say 3 months. The last 3 months of literally going around and around and around and around with commercial entities that want to be in Mount Juliet, with residential builders that want to be in Mount Juliet. And we're having that same conversation. And on that one, it was for the 76 C of O. Out of 115 residential units, we had to have one of the buildings, the 86 C of O. So about the same, Luke, right? 86 for 115. And we're still having that issue. And we tried to, okay, well, how do we mitigate that? Maybe we can just underwrite this when we start development and just do one half of this and underwrite 86. It doesn't pencil. When you have to mass develop a site this size to get it to balance, put all the infrastructure in, we're going to put the commercial infrastructure in, we're putting it in the ground. Like, it's not that I can understand from the perspective if we say, you know what, we hear you, we're not going to put any of that infrastructure in. We're putting the infrastructure in day one so that it is marketable. It's more desirable. You don't see a lot of these people that are putting commercial pads on the ground as a speculative nature to then sell them. They're buying raw commercial and developing themselves and going through the process. So we're willing to do that. And so I hear that. It's still the mitigation of risk and the amount of money we're putting into it, and we can't get it to underwrite at that point. I'm just being completely honest.
Let me clarify what you're saying real quick, just to make sure we're clear. You're saying that you are going to create a commercial pad. My understanding of that would be a slab, plumbed, electric, everything right there. That's what I call a pad. What you're saying is that, you keep referencing it as a pad. That's a commercial pad right there ready. I don't feel like that's your intent. Your intent is what you're doing, that you're preparing for them is basically you're going to provide access to water and sewer and power. And that's really all that you're going to do is give them some sleeves so that they have the ability to get those three over there to it and go ahead, and your sewer line is going to be there so they can come to the city, get their own tap, make their own tap whenever that time arrives. You're not going to come in and you're not going to make a commercial tap fee, pay that tap, create a pad out there. You're basically going to say, hey, your sewer's right there. We might go ahead and make the water tap and bring the water tap over there to you. We're going to do a transformer box, and we're going to provide sleeves from your pad to the transformer box. That's really all the prep that we're doing. And that's not a big financial burden. That's very incremental, probably one of the lower costs of everything right there.
As well as all the parking that you're going to see there, we're putting all that in. That's part of it. We're not just leaving that as vacant as well.
Yeah,
but
you're going to seed and straw it. And
sure, absolutely.
Yeah. It's not a very big commitment.
It depends. But it depends on, well, from if you're looking at it in a bubble as like that, just flat out, we're in this room, you don't see the site. Sure, I could get behind that sentiment. When you're looking at a site with severe topography and you're having to use everything to balance that site and grade it in a way that makes sense, that's a pretty big commitment when we're having to mass blast a site to get to that versus us just leaving it raw and then let a commercial person come back in and try to hoe ram this out and figure it out from there. And yeah, I think just one thing when we're looking at this too is, and this is where it's going to be interesting because it's private versus the public, but on any of this is when we're talking about whether it's a C of O thing or a year, an annual type of commitment that we're going to make for that, the commercial to go vertical, is it something we can also talk about for bond release, tie it to our bonds being released? That hurts us. I don't want to pay money on my bonds or my letters, especially letters of credit. Is there something we can do on that too?
Ultimately, my thing would be, it's going to be a recommendation back to the Board of Commissioners, and we can include as a recommendation item, and the Board of Commissioners would have the leeway in order to accept it or amend it at the BOC.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know the number. I don't even know what the answer is. I just know that, I do this all day, right? So I know there just has to be some kind of shared risk of some sort, whether it be what you're speaking of now or not. Because what's the difference between prepping the site for residential or commercial? I sell real estate, but I don't develop it, right? So what's the difference between the prepping of the site for the residential, the commercial site? Could you in turn say, you know what, this pad is prepped for residential development, we're just going to do this instead? Is that something that could happen, or?
Are you saying if we went ahead and did all, which we're doing all the horizontal work anyways, I mean, the site lays that way too, because what we're talking about, it's not flat. We have to figure that out. Are you saying if we said, you know what, psych, we're going to be residential on this instead? We're not doing, no, we are fully committed to the commercial right there. And we have people that are interested again, but they're not the same people that want to do the residential. And so that it's just that.
I got it. So then,
Yeah.
so like you said, you're fully committed, but we just got to put some skin in the game.
100%
Look, we need
committed
skin
to
in
that.
the game of some sort for a commitment is what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
yes, sir.
Makes sense. Yeah. Further questions, comments?
Good.
Further questions, comments? Wonderful. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
This time, let's call for citizen comments in regards to this item on the agenda. Any citizens wishing to make comment are welcome and encouraged to do so. Please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no citizen comments at this time, I'd like to ask for a recommendation in regards to this item on the agenda. I'll be happy to make a recommendation in regards to this item on the agenda. I will make a recommendation for a positive recommendation with the addition of the following comments. I am willing to allow staff opinions on the variance request. Make sure I'm on my right one. It'd fall underneath waivers variances 4. I'm going to call it 4-6. I'm willing to grant the variance to allow a single garage door right there versus 2. Granted that the single garage door must remain carriage style and decorative in nature that includes windows within it. The change for brick and stone to be at a minimum of 50%, and the alternative materials to be cement siding. Decorative lighting to be added at Lebanon Road entrance, both Lebanon Road entrances. Look at potential relocation of the mail kiosk away from the site's amenities. Add additional parallel parking within the site and coordinate that with staff. Correct 2 location errors on Plan C 1-00. Your pool house and tot lot are pointing at each other and not correctly pointing at the appropriate one. So I just want to make sure that we're properly identifying what is the pool house and what is the tot lot. Add a minimum of either 2 benches or a cabana and picnic pavilion with a bike rack back at the dog park so that the people have a place to sit as well back there. Look at potential design at Road A and B at the 3-way, potential accessibility point to the property to the west for future. Within staff, not saying it needs to be added, but discussion within that. Additional parking. I know this is conceptual at PMDP, but before it gets to FMDP, redesign of the commercial that includes appropriate and additional parking to support that commercial. The addition of a raised crosswalk at the connection of the residential and commercial that lines up with the proposed 10-foot walk path that goes between the residential and the commercial, and subject to staff comments. And that would be my recommendation.
That is a mouthful.
It is a lot, and I'm happy to give those to you as I have them written down. If there's any inability to catch all of those. Please.
Label portions of Road A that are to be public.
I did. Yes, ma'am.
think that was it. You are willing to grant or recommend the conditional use permit to allow anybody, not just the owners of the business, residential
To
occupancy.
use that?
Recommend that. You recommend that.
Yes, ma'am.
And other one. Oh, and add to the unit count the upstairs, the residential. Yeah, I think it's 180. It's 180 units that needs to be reflected in the charts.
To
Thank
add
you.
with the addition of those comments. And Shane, did you have one or two additional comments you asked to be
I just wanted
included?
The only thing I wanted to specify was that public sewer minus the service lateral shall be within a 20-foot easement. Pump station is also public.
To include Shane's additional public works comment as well. That is a motion for a positive recommendation with all of that.
I can second that.
Got a motion and a second for a positive recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Against? Abstentions? This is a positive recommendation. Next item up on our agenda is also a recommendation item back to the Board of Commissioners. It falls underneath a zoning ordinance amendment. It is reviewed the zoning ordinance amendment to Article 2-102, 2-103, and 6-102 to allow breweries in commercial zoning. Is this Ms. Hamlin
That's
or is this
me.
Ms. Johnson? Very well, Ms. Hamlin.
Well, I don't know if you guys have heard, but we have been getting lots of interest in breweries and microbreweries here within the city limits, and we've lost several opportunities to our pesky zoning ordinance that doesn't allow it in commercial. So I thought I'd try my hand at seeing if I could get some support from you guys in the BOC to allow those in commercial zoning districts. It's listed under manufacturing limited. It would allow those uses in commercial, but only those uses. So any other use listed under manufacturing limited would still not be allowed in commercial, but only the brewery and microbrewery. We've added those definitions in Article 2. That's on the first two pieces of paper you have in your staff report, front and back. Adding those in Article 3 in the detailed use activity listing. And then also adding those uses as permitted uses for commercial general, commercial interchange, commercial mixed use, commercial town center, and commercial retail center, with a condition, number 11 in Article 6-102A, that in CTC and CMU breweries and microbreweries shall be permitted only through the PUD process. I felt like due to the opportunity for mixed use development, we might want to have a little more control, especially in CTC in our downtown district, as to the design, location, and those other things, and through that PUD process. So I hope you support that. We've missed out a couple times on some neat little establishments that wanted to locate to our city. So I think it'd be a great little gathering spot for many to enjoy.
Questions or comments from the commission? Please, Commissioner Rast.
One you may or may not be able to answer, maybe Gino. My understanding is that we can't just have a business that operates as a bar like a microbrewery would, and there's certain conditions on how much food they need to serve and percentages and things like that. That would still apply to the microbrewery as well.
It would remain through that permitting processes.
Okay.
Further questions or comments?
Brings revenue to the city.
What took you so long?
I know, right? Sorry, I've been kind of busy. Also, we have 17 submittals next month and 5 of them are major subdivisions. So
Wonderful.
we're lucky we got this out when we
It'd be
did.
nice to get some house counts back up.
We're
They're
definitely
significantly
eat
down.
before you come next month.
Wonderful.
You're not gonna be
Yeah,
here.
what, next month?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's my wife's birthday. Yeah. So y'all enjoy that. This time, take citizen comments in regards to this item on the agenda. Seeing no citizens present, I'd like to ask for a recommendation in regards to this item on the agenda. It's positive. Motion and a second for a positive recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand. Aye. Against? Abstentions? Let me bring up one note real quick before I ask for a motion to adjourn on this. Just a side note to staff. So I was trying to be diligent and responsible, as I'm supposed to do. My wife says I'm not that enough. But I pulled up to add our training session on 9/26. Just happened to notice that that is also the Mount Juliet Chamber of Commerce golf tournament.
Days, and it's a famous one that I can't reschedule.
Might be done by 2.
Yeah, I think so.
Where's the golf tournament?
Pine Creek.
I'll try to arrange some helicopter transport for you guys.
That works. I was going to volunteer at the golf tournament and not really play. So now I might play just to have the opportunity for the helicopter.
I'm hoping to push it to at least 2 because I don't want you to have to be with me for 6 hours. And if you're a little late, I mean, most importantly, the Robert's Rules of Order would be most beneficial, and it's the second part. So if you were a little late, you could either join us when you could, or, I mean, you definitely are okay on that.
Okay.
But it's the water treatment plant for West Wilson. I don't know if you've ever done that.
Oh, yeah.
It seems pretty interesting.
Yeah, I got a really good friend down there, so I look forward to seeing
Yeah.
him.
We can't reschedule, sorry.
Fair
It's
enough.
Wildberry Catering, y'all understand?
Yeah, fair enough. That sounds good. When you smile like that, that's like, yes, that means she's got something good in line. With that being said, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Aye. Against, abstentions. We are adjourned.